Hey guys, before we jump into this new video, make sure that you click the link below in the description box, go to streamlabs.com and actually check out the Awaken Show cool new merch where you can find shirts like I'd Probe That, It's Probing Time, and Alien Lives Matter. We also have some cool new hoodies just in time for the winter and Christmas holidays, so make sure that you cop a gift for your friends and yourself. And with that being said, on with the show. So first off, Calvin, I want to thank you for coming on to the Awaken Show. Genuinely, I really do appreciate it, and it is such an honor to have you on the show. So thank you, first off. And I have to say again, I've told you this before, your case, in my opinion, is literally one of the biggest, if not the biggest, UFO cases that I've ever come across in my lifetime. And I think your story is important, not only to the community, but for the world to hear. I just want to start off by asking you a few questions in structured format as much as possible. But like I said before, please feel free to interject or add into addition if you need to, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So first off, this incident happened on back in 1973. Is that correct?
October 11th, 1973.
How old were you at that time, Calvin?
I was 18 years old. I turned 19 in November the 2nd, but I was 18 when the abduction actually happened.
Oh, wow. Okay, see, that's interesting because the interviews in the book and everything says it starts at 19. So that's good to know you were 18 at the time.
Yes, sir.
So at this time, you're 18 years old here. Before the incident, what was going on in your life? What was happening?
Well, I was working in the oil field, engaged to get married in October the 9th. I meant November the 9th. And I was working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, and I wanted to change jobs. The reason I ended up in Pascagoula, so I'd have some family time when I did get married. So actually, the day I was abducted was the first day I went to work at the shipyard. I've always told everybody I got hired, fired, and a physical all in the same day.
That's amazing. I'm, I'm sorry. That is hilarious. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's actually where you met Charles Hickson. Is that right?
It is. Charles Hickson was an old friend of my father's. And my father said, well, you want to change jobs. Charlie is working at a shipyard there in Pascagoula. Call him up and he'll put you to work and you can get some normal hours. So that's what I did.
And how long would you say that you knew Charles Hickson before this whole incident happened?
Oh, gosh. That's the first time this question's been asked, but met him in 62, I think.
Okay, so you've known Charles Hickson for quite some time, and at one point in time, you both decide to actually go on a fishing trip, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. We'd always fished together through the years.
Okay.
But when we got off work that day, that's when he decided to go fishing. And I said, Charlie, I don't have, that's what I've always called him. I said, I don't have my fishing equipment down here. He said, well, you could borrow some of mine, and I'll let you fish with it. But he ended up loaning it to me.
That's a good
I
friend.
wish now he hadn't.
Okay. So And this was at the Pascagoula River, and this is pretty close now to where Angel Shipyard is at, correct?
Uh, that was F.B. Walker and Son shipyard that we was working at. That was Shaw Peters shipyard where we were inducted. And the Ingle shipyard is just down below that. Yes, sir. They all right in there together.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for correcting me. You said Shaw Peters. Is that how you said it?
Shaw Peters shipyard. That was no abandoned shipyard.
Perfect. Okay. Um, and at this time, were you interested in UFOs or alien phenomena or anything like that?
I had no idea what a UFO or alien was. I mean, I was an old country boy, and we was brought up as sharecroppers, where you worked somebody else's fields and worked for them. And so I didn't get to have the luxury of watching TV. I walked behind a mule for all day long and pick cotton and hoe cotton and all. So I didn't have an easy life coming up.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. I mean, these days we have all kinds of technology, like games and Xboxes and computers. I mean, everything. Look at what we're doing. We're literally talking to each other online. You know,
If you had told me this back then, I wouldn't have believed it.
yeah, I don't think I would have believed it either. I remember, when I used to answer the phone at my grandmother's house, and we had the old rotary phones that you
Oh,
would
yeah.
actually use. I go there. It just recently got moved, but yeah, that's as far as I go back, and those days are definitely special to me.
Right.
Wow.
So, I mean, that takes it back. Was no cell phones. Were no. If you got TV, you had three channels on it: NBC, CBS, and ABC.
Okay, I
And
remember something like that.
and if the president spoke, you was out of luck if you was gonna watch something on TV.
Oh wow. And I would imagine it was the floor model TVs.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We had actually had rabbit ears and had tinfoil across the top of the rabbit ears just to be able to get them channels.
Okay, so I want to ask you. Let's go into this incident here. So you guys go on this fishing trip. Uh, what happens then?
We when we left the shipyard, we went by to get our fishing equipment, and he said, "I know a place over here," which was the old grain elevator then, and we tried it there. Now I don't know if you know how Louisiana bugs are, but they got a mouth bigger than their body. You can't see them, but they'll eat you up. So we had to leave there, and we went to the old abandoned shipyard, the Shaw Peters shipyard, and we walked out on the pier. And this being my first day building ships, I was sitting on this pier looking across the river. My car was parked behind me, and it took a while to get down because of the debris and everything to the where we was gonna fish. And I remember looking at a ship, and this ship was made out of steel, and I was thinking, now how does something made out of steel, thick steel, float like these things did? It was a big old Coast Guard ship or Noah's ship. And that's when I noticed some hazy blue lights coming from my back. And it actually, I thought we were trespassing on private property and they was there to run us off. So I stood up and turned around and looked to see if the law was fixing to come get us. And Charlie stood up about this same time. And I told him, I said, "You're going to have to bail me out of jail, if we go to jail for trespassing. Oh, we're not going to go there because I fish here all the time." But that's when I seen a bright, we was both standing there looking, being nosy to see where the blue lights was coming from. And that's when all of a sudden a bright spotlight just shined on us. And it was so bright that it kind of blinds you for just a minute. And then before I could get my sight back, and Charlie could, there was three robotic-looking creatures that was down upon us. Well, two of them had got a hold of Charlie, and I still couldn't make out the facial distinction until later because of the blinding light. And one got a hold of myself.
So you go fishing at Shaw Peter Shipyard,
Yes, sir.
and and you see this light reflecting off the water, and
Right, a hazy blue light.
and you think it's the police, but you turn around and it's a UFO. It's a spacecraft.
Yes, sir.
Calvin, at this point, how much did you want it to be the police officers at that time?
Oh gosh, I would have give anything. Matter of fact, I was a strong swimmer, and I looked to the front of me and it was water, and to the side and water, and then to the other side and it was water, and we didn't have no time to run. But I would have scattered now. They wouldn't have been nothing but footprints there if I could have found a place to run.
Okay, I'm so sorry to interject, but I just wanted to clarify that there. So
No, that's great.
you see this light, these beings are pretty much upon you at this time. So what happens from there?
Okay, so two of them, we was standing up looking at the craft by then, or what, really couldn't make it out because of the bright light. But I noticed there was three bulky looking creatures that was coming toward us. I mean, they were big, looked like Green Bay Packers fixing to tackle you. So these things levitated us off the ground. Well, they took me on board first and just kind of levitated up about 2 foot. And we didn't have to walk through the marsh grass or nothing. And they got me to the door, and that's when I noticed, started looking for where the lights was coming from. And they was actually illuminating out of the walls. I mean, it wasn't like a big light bulb out there shining on you. The lights was coming from inside the craft out of the walls.
Interesting.
So that's the first thing that I noticed that really shocked me.
Did you get a chance to see what the door looked like on the spacecraft?
The door was open when we got there.
Was it a oval shape? Was it a rectangle, square shape?
I would say it would be more of a oval shape, to kind of fit the craft, because the craft was oval shaped too.
Oh, okay. All right. And so they take you on to this craft. And again, I'm so sorry to interject, but what happens from there, Calvin?
Well, when we got to the hallway, now I didn't see Charlie none on the craft until we got back out. He made a left turn, and his movements, this creature's movements, was robotic, and that's why I say he was probably a robot. And we went down a hall a little ways, and he kind of turned right, and there was a glass table in there. I won't never forget it. That was a beautiful table, but I was scared to death, and he laid me on an angle on this table. I'm going to say about a 45-degree angle, and I couldn't move. He didn't have to strap me down or nothing right then.
Wow.
So this thing backed up in a corner and shut down like you threw a switch on him, like a jack in the box, just went back in and rested. And that's when I seen how big and ugly he was. I called him the big ugly one. Well, while I was on this table, though, I heard something, and I turned. I could roll my head then, but I couldn't move my body, and I could roll my eyes. And this, what I call a fairly attractive woman, now I don't know if it was a woman or a man or what it was, came out. And the only thing I could tell different on her is her middle fingers. Her two middle fingers was longer than, the rest of her fingers.
So if I walked out and seen this this person or this female, would I be able to discern that it was from another world?
I don't believe you would. Now, I don't know if she was in disguise or had been trained to do what she did, and maybe she had on some kind of disguise so she wouldn't scare me. But she was pretty well versed, in what she was doing. I didn't notice any breast or anything on her. And I could sense that it was a woman, just the same way, a man can sense a woman and a woman can sense there's a man. Now, living right here close to New Orleans, that's a pretty good little thing to pick up. And
Absolutely.
most of your better looking women are men. If you see a real knockout woman on Bourbon Street, and you can bet that that's usually a man, and that's the sense that I got from her. But I felt like she was a woman.
Interesting. So this woman comes out of this area, and does she talk to you? What happens from there?
Well, the first thing she did, and I'll never forget this, was kind of like your grandmother would come up and grab you by the cheek and feel your skin. Now, I couldn't tell any difference in the skin tone, the coolness or warmness or anything like that, but she kind of just pinched my cheek a little bit. Then she took her left hand and put on my chin and pushed it down to open my mouth, and took her two middle fingers and run down my throat. I don't know what they call the little hang-me-down phone thing in the back of your throat.
I know exactly. I don't know the name of it too, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that little thing that hangs down. She seemed like she was curving her fingers up to go into my nasal cavities. And I got to hurting. I got to breathe where I couldn't breathe. And I got to bleeding. And she just automatically pulled her hand out and telepathically communicated, "We don't mean you any harm." And I thought, now this is weird. She said we. I don't know if she meant this big ugly one or there's somebody else back there. But I started bleeding real bad out of my nose and out of my mouth. It was just a terrible, lot of pain there.
So this thing basically examines you, violates you.
Way violated. I had a sore throat for a long time after that.
Oh my God, that sounds horrible, Calvin.
And was bleeding. I couldn't stop the bleeding.
So,
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's fine. She took her hand out, and that's when she just telepathically said, "We don't mean to harm you." And I was thinking to myself, it's a little too late there, woman. So that's not what I didn't think woman. I thought the B word.
Right. Right. Which you should have. So she does this examination on you. She communicates with you telepathically. What's going on in your mind at this time that all this is happening?
Well, I had that, what I call my go to hell shot that this other one gave me. He injected it when he picked us up. I kind of left that out because I didn't think about it. But I got an injection, and Charlie also got an injection. And when we was laying on the table, I was just kind of zoned out. I really didn't care too much till the pain started. And actually, when she got through with her finger examination down my throat, she made a noise like an alligator grunting, like it went goon, goon. And this big ugly one that was standing in the corner jumped up again like a jack in the box, come over and grabbed me by the arm. And that's when I heard a little puff of air. And later on, we found out in the emergency room I was injected twice that night because there was 2 needle marks. Or the doctor really didn't say needle marks, but it was like an air injection where it just where they inoculate a lot of people, and they just walk by and they stick you, and they don't have to use a number. They just blow a lot of air pressure in there and put the medicine in your system.
So there were physical evidence, physical marks of something
Yes, sir.
that happened to you.
Oh,
Okay.
definitely. Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that table, which I think is very interesting. When you were on this table, did you notice any markings or anything of that nature on it?
No, I didn't. The only thing that I noticed when they first laid me down, I was laid on my back looking at the ceiling, and there was something about the size of a deck of cards. It was kind of blue underneath, and it came down and stopped about 1.5 feet from my head. And then it started rotating around my head, and as it would go around, it would click. It'd go click, click, click. Then it come up right between my eyes and stopped. It shot back up into the ceiling, just disappeared, and that's when she came out.
And this was floating in midair. There wasn't anything
I,
discernible that it was hanging from.
I didn't see anything like that. Now it could have been, but I didn't see anything.
Okay. So eventually you guys are taking off this craft.
Yes, sir. When she summons that big ugly one to come over and got me, and he gave me that other shot. That's when they took me back out, stood me up almost where they had picked me up, and my arms were stretched out facing the water, and I was standing, and Charlie was laying on the ground by me trying to get up, and he was saying, "Calvin, Calvin, you okay, son?" And I thought, well, no, I'm not okay. I just went through some big dramatic stress thing here. So that puts us out on the ground.
Okay. And at this time, were you still bleeding? Were there any discernible injuries that you still had on you at this point?
Oh, gosh, yeah. What I should have done, I had a white t-shirt on, was use that and save the DNA on it. I mean, we didn't have DNA back in, but if I had saved that, we would have had some DNA on it, I bet, from
Wow.
what had happened.
It's amazing. Wow. Okay. Wow. So you mentioned this earlier in our interview. You said that it just passed, or the anniversary on October 11th, 1973. Just passed actually on Sunday, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it don't bother me now, and I usually enjoy it. I mean, last year we had a big book signing because of the covert and all. We didn't have one this year, but last year at the book signing, it was people lined up for blocks and block, and they had to get the police out, to slow the traffic down or block off the traffic so the people could get in. But I love meeting the people now. And before then, I was kind of shy, kind of afraid to. You really don't know what's in the back of somebody's mind. And I've stayed on guard for all these years. I got married that following November the 9th. I never talked to my wife about what had happened. Never talked to my friends. I just didn't want to talk about this. So I bought my own little construction company and kind of blended off in the back, and hired people to run it. When I would go out, most of the people didn't know my name or didn't recognize me because, I would always wear a cap or something like that.
And I would imagine you probably wanted to keep it like that too.
And that's the way I wanted to keep it. And until I did the book 46 years later, nobody even knew who I was.
So I have a question in for you here, Calvin. So first off, I want to ask you, have you been back since that incident at that shipyard or at that location?
Oh gosh, yeah. It's 6 miles from my house by water. I still fish over there. I leave my boat in the water. I still go over there and fish. I've took many reporters out since the book happened, and we've been out and looked. Now the site has actually changed some. Uh, I do a lot of book signings and a lot of deals for the city of Pascagoula and events for them. So, and they regularly take it, want me to go back. But I've had the Travel Channel come down and film the actual spot, and a lot of these different things on the History Channel, and got some still coming up. I can I can send you the link to my website and
Yeah.
let you look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, Calvin, I mean, I- I've served in the military. I've done some pretty crazy things in the military, but one thing I wouldn't do is go back to where a UFO picked me up. So you are a brave man. I just I would have packed up and left that very same day. So you
Well,
are.
I did go back home to Laurel, but then I slipped back down here on the coast because I wanted a normal job and a normal life. And the best place to hide is in plain sight.
That's true. Hmm.
And that was on my mind. Go back to the coast. They think I'm all in Laurel now. So I can go back there and work. I drifted around some, on other jobs and all. But bottom line, I ended up back here in Pascagoula. I live 6 miles from where this happened. Uh, and then since this has happened and I've been public with it, you'll be surprised at the eyewitness testimonies that has come out. And I'm incredible. The police department, preachers, probation officers, just normal people going to work. And had one guy on his deathbed that he said, you know, he denied it for years, but him and his wife was an eyewitness there, and he denied it, told her to shut up, not to say nothing, because people think they're crazy. But on his deathbed, he made a video where he, said that's what she seen, that's what I seen, and we actually seen them get abducted. So a
So
man ain't gonna too much lie on his deathbed.
absolutely not. So not only are there other witnesses that have seen this, but this it was on the same date, and there's multiple people that have actually seen this event.
Yes, sir. The guy at the police department that was taking the calls that night, he said before he even knew we was even brought in, he had 50 calls about UFOs and all that had been seen right there, and he documented and logged all of them. And he's a career police officer. I mean, or was he just retired here a year or two ago?
Okay, so let's recap on this. So just to ask a quick question, um, I know we kind of went over this, but why didn't you want to uh, tell anyone about this encounter?
Well, this was back in '73. If you think about it, this just was unheard of. And I was fixing to get married, and I wanted to have a normal life. All I've ever wanted to do was buy a house, get married, buy a house, have children, have grandchildren, retire and fish. And I didn't see no way this could happen with this hanging over my head. And to me, you get your 5 minutes of fame and then it's over with. But it never has been over with. We even had Dr. Hynek come down a day or two after, the next day after this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Charlie, and this is where he and I had fallen out. I said, Charlie, I don't want my name brought up in this. I don't want nothing to do with it. And I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to do no interviews. Well, me and him had a big falling out over this because he went public. And that's why it never died down.
Gotcha.
And I didn't. I just stayed in the background.
So something I'm a little unclear about here. Um, in one of the interviews, you stated that one of you, I don't know if it was you or Charlie, told the police that you had something to tell them, and you're not going to believe us, or you're not going to believe me. Who was that said that to the police?
That was Charlie
Okay,
on the night it was called in.
and the police didn't believe you guys.
Well, when we left there, they believed us because the guy I was telling you about that was on duty that night, his father was a sheriff. And the sheriff department is actually the ones that came out and picked us up and gave us sobriety tests and checked us. But they had a tape recorder in the background. They recorded everything they said and everything we said together. But the deal is, we didn't know they had the tape recorder in the room, and that's one thing that proved to them that something happened. That, and when they took me to the emergency room.
And this was
So,
at the Jackson County Sheriff Department.
yes, sir, it was.
And
Uh,
the person that interviewed you, was that Captain Glenn Ryder at that time?
Glenn Ryder, yes, sir.
Okay. What were some of the questions that he asked you?
Well, they came out to pick us up. Charlie asked me to stop at a little convenience store because there weren't no cell phones or anything back in. And I thought he was going to call his wife, but he actually called Keesler Air Force Base.
Oh, wow.
And they told him that Project Blue Book or nothing didn't last and that they needed to report it to the local authorities, which would be the Jackson County Sheriff Department.
So you mentioned, I'm so sorry, you mentioned Project Blue Book. So was this well known at this time, Project Blue Book?
Well, I don't know. I never heard of it at the time,
Okay.
but apparently they did. I mean, Dr. Dr. Jay Heineck, he actually come down on his own penny to see us to do an interview. And he actually said that I don't know what happened to these men, but something definitely happened. They are very sincere in what they say.
So did they ever make you take a polygraph test, or make you guys take a polygraph test?
Yes, sir. Charlie and I both did. Had a voice stress test, a polygraph. I'd say back then, I never known test to man to see if we was telling the truth. And we did a big interview at Keesler Air Force Base later.
Okay.
But
So, and also you said they recorded you. They secretly recorded you. So you had no
right.
clue at that time that you guys were being recorded when you were essentially being held.
No, sir, we didn't. They picked us up at this store, and of course I was driving. It was my car we was in. And the one that's driving's the one that's gonna get all the flack. They got me out, did a field sobriety test, see if I was drinking and all. And
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
made us follow them to the sheriff department. And then that's when they separated us into two separate rooms and interviewed us both that way. And believe it or not, but I just now got the tape of the whole interviews from all them because I hadn't really been in. Then they put us in a room together that we didn't know we was being recorded.
Wow.
And they caught me saying a little prayer and all that. So the sheriff finally come out and said, "Look, fellas, y'all too upset to talk tonight. I'll see y'all in the morning." And I thought, boy, we in trouble now.
So, Calvin, you had a chance to actually. I'm sure you've listened to that audio tape.
Yes,
since
sir.
then. How is it listening to yourself in that moment in time? Does it give you chills? Does it take you back?
Oh, it does, because that's actually just here lately when the guy gave me a copy of the tape, the whole reel-to-reel tape of the interviews and being locked up in a room. But yeah, it's still kind of spooky.
Okay, so for the record, so eventually you guys are able to go home. The officer says you guys are able to go home, and he wants to talk to you in the morning.
Right.
And from my understanding, that's when all hell breaks loose and the media gets a hold of it.
It is. Now, when I got home, I was in such a mess. I went into the shower. I pulled all my clothes off, my shoes, everything I had, and we didn't have plastic bags back in, but I put it in a paper bag. I got in the shower and poured a gallon of bleach over my head and rubbed it in.
Oh, wow.
And I don't. The reason I did that because I remember coming up, my mother, if we got in poison ivy or something like that, she would bathe us in bleach, just not as much. Then I threw all my clothes in the dumpster and tried to sleep a little bit. And we got up the next morning and we went on into work. Well, that's when I noticed, well, this is just my second day in. I didn't know how much traffic was supposed to be there or anything. But I seen these big TV trucks with these uplinks on them, reeled up and had satellites shooting up in the air and all. And I didn't think nothing of it then until we got in and they called mine and Charlie's name to come to the office immediately. And we got in and the owner of the shipyard said, look, y'all going to have to give an interview about what happened because we cannot conduct business here. We can't even use the phones because of the media. He said, I have an attorney that works for the shipyard. He's on his way down now, along with the sheriff. And y'all need to work up a press release with him. And he'll give the press release, and maybe we can get rid of some of these people.
So you have people all in your face asking you questions, like me.
Yes, sir.
Harassing you, asking you all these questions. And you said that you had to eventually make a statement here. What happened at that point? What kind of statement did you guys give?
Well, I told them nothing happened to me to talk to Charlie, because me and Charlie done agreed I didn't want nothing to do with it, and he was going public with it. So I figured this would be a good time for him to take over, and I thought I'd just slip out of the background. But that's not the way it happened. So Charlie and Joe Camingo, the attorney, worked up a press release. And as they gave it out, the sheriff, Fred Diamond, showed up at the office just like he said he would. He said, look, I got to thinking about something, guys. I need to take y'all to the emergency room, get you checked, see if y'all might be contagious from any bacterial virus and all. Because, everybody had watched them Apollo missions. When the astronauts came back, they kept them completely isolated for 7 days, I believe.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't let them come out and even see their families. And everybody got to thinking about we might have something. And the sheriff believed it enough. Now, he was a dead serious sheriff. I mean, you better not let him catch you driving and drinking, or you'll end up getting a big cell flashlight in the back of the head or something. I mean, that's how serious this man is. And he actually gave a release himself that there is no doubt, and that's in my website, that there is no doubt that something happened to us. But he took us to the hospital, got us checked. And that's when they found the needle marks on my left arm, 2 of them. Found one on Charlie's arm. Dr. Bosco, the emergency attending room, he drawed blood, checked us. He said he thought we would be safe to go. But the sheriff went the extra step to calling Keesler Air Force Base to have us checked for radiation.
Wow.
So we drove 30 miles. Of course, back in, they met us at the gate, and we went back to a warehouse in the back. And there was 5 guys in hazmat suits holding something in their hands. They told everybody to step back. They checked Charlie and I for radiation. Now, they did find a small amount on me, but it's because I worked around in the oil field. Schlumberger used these little radiation tablets to look down these holes. And that's where I figured that amount came from.
Okay.
So they checked us for radiation. One of them said, all clear. They said, we want to see y'all in the back. And that's when they escorted us down a long hallway. It must have been a quarter of a mile down that hallway. And we walked in, and they had a lot of military brass in there. They had the local mayors in there from all 3 counties down here on the coast. They had police chiefs in there, and some of their media guys were in there. So they sat down and talked to us. Well, by this time, I was scared not to talk some. And they also have give us the minutes on what the reports that they done for us. So when they got through, they was just as nice as they could be. They said, well, y'all can go. And that's when the sheriff took us back in the car. And before we got back to the shipyard, he said, there's one more person that wants to see y'all. And he's waiting for you at the shipyard. Now, y'all need to see him. It was Dr. Heineck that was doing over Project Blue Book then. So we went in, Dr. Heineck and Dr. Harder was there. Okay. They came down on their own dime. Well, they split us up. I went in to see Dr. Heineck first, and Charlie went to see Harder. Well, Harder was giving us a physical exam, trying to hypnotize us. Heineck was just questioning. And I felt pretty comfortable around him. He made me feel comfortable enough that, you could talk to him without him really ridiculing you. Okay. And before he left, he gave me his home phone number on his card. Told me to call him if I ever needed anything or thought of something or anything else. Then I went back to Dr. Harder, and that's where he documented the puncture wounds again on my arm. So, they tried to hypnotize me, but I was too afraid that night to go through it. They did hypnotize Charlie. I don't know how long he stayed under. He wrote a book, but I've never read his book because I never was interested in it.
So I want to go back on this here. So for the people that don't follow this story or this genre of news, I want to go over some key points of your story, if that's okay, Calvin.
Oh, that's great.
So you were questioned by the police that same day, and you were secretly recorded.
Right.
You had puncture wounds of some kind of needle being injected into you.
I did, yes, sir.
They gave you a polygraph test.
Yes, sir.
They also did a voice stress test, which is actually more accurate than the lie detector test.
Yes, sir, it is.
And you were hypnotized several times over, even recently, sometime this year or last year, right?
Yeah, Kathleen, I'm trying to think of her name. I'm not good on names here lately. But anyhow, I was hypnotized by her. Then I was hypnotized by Bud Hopkins. And of course, Dr. Harder tried. And, it's just been, they come out of the woodwork wanting to hypnotize you. And I finally said, enough of that's enough.
And you were also taken to Keesler Air Force Base to be tested for radiation.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And all of this stuff came back disseminating that you were truthful in your claim. You and Charlie.
Yes, sir, it did.
This is amazing to me. I'm sorry. I have to kind of... Okay. So years passed, and you didn't really talk about what happened to you.
No, not to nobody. Like I say, not to my wife or my family, my friends. because I just figured it would go away, and my wife didn't want to upset me with it. So
How I'm sorry. How long was it that you didn't talk to anyone about this abduction?
46 years later.
46 years you didn't talk to anyone about this.
No, sir. And I tell you how it came up, me even talking. We lived in a neighborhood over here in a subdivision. And you know, all the families are pretty close to each other. Well, we had a neighbor that passed away. My wife and I went to the wake. And you know the little register they have for you to sign?
Yes.
Normally I wouldn't sign something like that. I'd just let her sign it and, you know, be done with that. But I put my real name on there. And believe it or not, people recognized that name.
Wow.
And they started coming around wanting to talk about this. And I told them this is not the place to do that. That this man's wife is grieving, his daughter's grieving, and I'm not going to be foolish and do that. So I told my wife, I said, let's go. I said, I'm taking attention away from them. And that's what's important, him and his family.
Absolutely.
So we got an old pickup I got and was going home. She said, maybe you should write a book. I said, look, I don't have an education. I can't spell my own name, much less somebody else's now. I don't know how to punctuate nothing. I said, no, writing a book's not what I need to do. So I don't know why, but the next day, there's a guy called Philip Mantle, the publisher of the book. And he said, he called to ask me something about Charlie because he knew I wouldn't talk about myself. And he said, well, you know, you said the media, one reason you didn't give a interview to the media is they changed the story. They never got it right. He said something then that got me to thinking. He said, if you make this your legacy, put it black and white. Once you put it black and white, they can't change that. And that got to making a lot of sense to me. I said, well, let me think about it. Call me back in a week. So I had put no answer on the phone so I wouldn't have to talk to him again. I just, you know how on your caller ID I put no answer?
Yes, sir.
I was launching my boat. My phone rung. Well, I answered it because I thought something might be wrong at home, but I didn't look at my caller ID. And it was Philip. Well, I wasn't going to be rude to the man and hang up. I was just going to tell him no. But before we got off the phone, he talked me into it. I said, under one condition, Philip. I said, you know the reasons that I don't want to do a book. It's because the press always changed everything I said. I said, now if I do a book, I'm not an educated man. I don't know how to spell. I don't know how to punctuate. I don't know how to express this in the words I want to. But I don't want anything changed. I don't want you to come in and correct a misspelled word, put a period or a question mark or anything where I didn't do it. I want nothing changed. And he agreed to that, and he stayed by his word. So what you got is an uneducated redneck writing a book. But you know, it went over so good because everybody felt that I was so honest in it. They said it's just like sitting in the living room and you telling the story. And then the big kick I got out of Philip, he's from the UK. The only thing he changed in the book, I had in there where I was eating a bologna sandwich for lunch one day. And he called it a blondie sandwich. And I got tickled about that. So, you know, I didn't say nothing. I'd bring it up every now and then to let him know. But that's the communications between the UK. I always blame him. Say you don't speak English, but you know, they invented the English language.
Right. That is hilarious.
But when you read the book, it's the raw book. And it starts out, you know, with me working in the cotton fields under a shade tree as a kid. And it goes from there. And You know, what life is, that's what life is.
Well, you know
I
what?
never did
I,
expect to make nothing out of myself.
I definitely have to thank Philip for talking you in to making that book.
Oh, I think the man, we've become close friends now, and I just love this man to death. I mean, I trust him. He's a businessman, I'm not. And the
Mm.
man is very honest with me. He'll explain something to me on uh, when we got contracts or something to say the deal we had. I said, you sell the book and I'll go around and advertise it. Actually, I was just gonna make a few conventions and do a few little talk shows and stuff like that. But it's got so big now.
Mhm.
I did make a few conventions. I met a lot of great people, and I do my part. You know, I was gonna retire last October again and just disappear, but you know, here it is. We started working on the screenplay. I got finally got my houseboat finished and got my little getaway. So I get on it sometime and just kind of go off and disappear a few days at a time. And I live a good life now. My wife and I actually get along better now since I come out. You know, you not talk to a woman or tell her something for 46 years and just say, you know, I don't want to talk about it. That's not good for a relationship.
No, it's not.
So after I freed up and started talking to her, now when I got the books, I told Philip, I said, well, what we gonna do, as bad as my language is and all in there, because I don't hold back nothing. Um, I'm gonna buy 10 books. I'm gonna give one to all my family and let them read what happened to me. That way, I don't have to sit down and talk to them about it. My friends. So
That's
I
fair.
did. That's what I did. I ordered 10 books for myself. Even give my wife and daughter one. Well, once I got my wife started, you don't shut her up. I mean, it's always something going on. She wants to take control. I said, okay, whatever you want to do. So that's one thing that I insisted in this screenplay, and Philip did also. She was there from the beginning, before the beginning. I want her to be involved in this to the point on everything that she went through with and all to you know, so she feels like she is a part of it, and she is a very important part of it. Because to be honest, if I'd been her, I would have killed me through some of this.
I understand.
So,
It's definitely important to have a strong woman behind you. I hear that. I hear some people say that.
yeah, it definitely is. And like I say, I didn't. There's times that I'd get in such a state of mind that I didn't treat my family right, you know, and I realize that now. And it's just brought us all closer, even brought me closer to my daughter. And, you know, I love her like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that, and it's also funny that um, Philip actually mentions legacy. Uh, you know, I just recently had some incidents in my personal life where I was having some health issues, and I know it's a little bit different, but you know, when you have health scares like that, you start to go through and think about, you know, what your legacy is going to be and what you're going to leave behind.
Right.
And yeah, I can definitely say I can relate on that as far as what Philip was saying. And man, I just again wish you and Philip nothing but good health and prosperity. It sounds like the books are doing great. I know the books are doing great. You have a
They doing
screenplay.
good, yes, sir.
Um, you know, I in the two books that are out. The one that I'm actually reading right now is Pascagoula: The Closest Encounter, and it's my story. And then the other one is Pascagoula: The Story Continues, New Evidence and New Witnesses. Correct?
That's exactly right. We was just gonna do the one book, Pascagoula, the closest encounter, and it got to being so much information coming in. The second book is just as big as that book, and it's backed up with uh, witnesses that actually came forward that seen it that night that didn't want to come forward until then, and they credible because I have to give Philip one thing in his homework. When we did the second book, he actually checked everybody out and made sure that they were credible, and
Hmm.
because we didn't want no one that wasn't credible in there.
So, Calvin, after the fact, when the second book comes out, the subtitle says it's New Witnesses. Did you actually get to personally meet any of these new witnesses?
Absolutely, yes, sir. Me living here, I made a point to get all of them that was still around here pulled together, and some that wasn't. We all came down to the public library here and sat down and talked to them and visited with them. And it was such a blessing that somebody else had seen this. And I mean, they are good people, most of them. I stay in touch with them till now. We just kind of chit chat. Might not be about UFO abductions or something, but I call them up, sometimes just see what they had for dinner. Because I'd go over to their house and eat if it was any better.
I,
But
I would imagine it's kind of like a battle buddy when you guys are in the trenches and you go through
oh
similar
yeah,
things. Yeah, I mean, that just creates a bond that's
it does, a
unbreakable.
special bond. Like I say, we had one. Her husband died. I went to the hospital regularly to see him and her. He was in ICU for a long time, and I'd made sure that if they needed anything, they got it. Uh, that's the same way I am with my neighbors. If they need something, I'm there for them. I'm always getting out and cutting yards for the people that can't, and doing things that they can't do. If I see somebody needs some groceries or something, I don't say nothing to them. I go buy them what I think they need, and I take and put them on their doorsteps, and I leave. And I just do it anonymously to them.
Calvin, I have
This
to
is
say that's awesome. That speaks to your character and your integrity. And that's not something that you find common in this day and age. So it's good to know that there are still people like you around that care for their
oh,
neighbors.
I love everybody in my neighborhood. I love everybody in Jackson County, to be honest. Now, when I walk down the street, I get recognized all the time. They just want to come up and talk sometime. And because this has been real public around here. And I've recently gave back a $5,000 donation to somebody that really needed the money and all. I'm not going to call their name out or nothing because,
Mhm.
that's between me and them and God.
And so, Calvin, with all the evidence compiled in your favor, uh, do you ever get skeptics that try to disprove your claim?
You're going to have skeptics to anything that you do. And yes, I do. And I've had a newspaper woman come out and do a strict interview. And before she left, she was crying because she just felt it in her heart that this was true. And then, I want independent thinkers. I don't want everybody to believe me. I want it to be some critics out there. And you find them sometime, but I've never had anybody really come down real hard about it. After they talk to me for a little while, if they ever meet me, they understand.
Huh. I mean, I would imagine so. It sounds to me like they would have to with all the evidence that
Yes,
is
sir.
is in your favor. Um,
I, I've actually been to bed at night and wake up somebody be parked in my driveway, waiting on me to get up to talk to me.
you know what? I saw. I wanted to ask you about that because and I'm glad you mentioned it. So with this newfound stardom, uh, you know, are these people finding you online? Are they getting your information? What's going on
Oh
here?
gosh, I don't know how they do it, but I get people to send me pictures through the mail. They get my actual address. People calls me on my personal phone number. How they get it, I don't know. People camp out my driveway, and when I get up, they out there, and I ask them. I said, "Well, why didn't y'all knock on the door? Come in. We'll get some coffee. We'll talk about all this."
So
But
you actually let them in your house?
I do, yes, sir. And I've I've had people that just needed to talk for some reason or had something on their mind. Uh, I have some. I'm not gonna call them nuts, religious nuts or nothing, that come by, but they'd be really thinking the world was coming to the end and all. I said, look, you know, you don't never know. I mean, it just depends on how you believe. I said, I'm sure it is because everything ends one day.
Mm-hmm.
Said, but I don't know anything about it myself. So,
Wow. One more question, or I should say, one last question I want to ask you, and this is personal to me. It's not really a personal question, just personal to me. In one of your interviews, you said that the spacecraft that you saw was shaped like a football.
right.
And you said, and I actually, when I heard this, I thought of a movie. I couldn't help but to compare it to a movie that I actually saw in the 80s as a kid. It's called The Flight of the Navigator. Have you ever heard of this before?
No, sir, I haven't.
Okay. The movie is about a kid who was abducted by a spaceship that looks like a silver football. And it's an alien on board, and the alien is a part of the ship, and the alien is a long neck with a robotic eye at the top of it.
Yeah.
Do you think that movie might have actually took some creative liberties from your story?
Oh, I don't know. They could have because I was telling, that it did look like a football in the shape of a football.
Yeah, this it says this movie was named The Flight of the Navigator. It came out in 1986. It stars Joey Kramer as David Freeman, and it was 13 years after your abduction. So they had plenty of time to read your.
They did, didn't they?
Plenty of time to read your abduction case here, and I also wanted to ask you. I have a really good friend, and he knew that I was actually going to be interviewing you. So I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Please ask him this. Please ask him that." Because we're big fans. So he recently just did an interview in reference to the Berkshire UFO. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
And he was just bringing to my attention the similarities in your case and the Berkshire UFO. And he was saying that it looked, they said it looked like a turtle shell / football. They said the light was emanating from it. It was actually looks like it was coming from one side. One of the witnesses said that the people in it looked robotic, and they talked about a red glass table. Now, you didn't mention red glass table, but you mentioned a glass table.
Yes, sir, a glass table.
Do you think
But
this could have been the same thing, possibly?
it's a good possibility. Matter of fact, I've just heard about this thing, and there's a book out that Philip had. That he's selling now, and he sent me one, and I'm gonna read up on it and see, just compare, just for my own use, to see if anything's.
I mean, if this thing is going around abducting people, you know, we might want to definitely look into that as a country for sure.
That ain't no.
Um,
Well, the Department of Defense now has just now got investigating UFOs and all. Harry Reid was on the other day, Senator Harry Reid, and he was talking about them doing all that. So it's coming public.
yeah, and I'm looking at a lot of the similarities of your case, a lot of similarities with the Berkshire UFO, the Nimitz report, and all of these line up really well. I mean, from the details of the craft, it flying across water for the majority of the time. I mean, these are really similar, and it just makes me wonder if all of this stuff has been going on. I would imagine this has had to been going on at least since the 60s.
When I was in the library down here in Pascagoula not too long ago, the librarian said, "I want to show you something. You know where to keep the old newspaper things and
Yes.
all."
Yes.
Back in 1887, I believe, right in the same flight path almost, there was 500 people in a little town just right here by Pascagoula that all had seen something. Back then they didn't have satellites or nothing like that, or no lights. These people were all out and they seen something like that flew by their little town low. And you got 500 eyewitnesses in the 1800s that seen that and documented it. So, I know it had to be a scary situation for them, but this has been going on a long time.
I totally agree. I mean, when you look at it and you start to study it, like I have, and I'm sure you have, you notice that there, are paintings of, Renaissance artists that are painting UFOs
Right.
in their skies. Just recently, they actually discovered some object that was in I want to say the Mediterranean Sea, or the Baltic anomaly that they're talking about here. They say when they go down and they scuba dive down to that object that's down there, all of their technical equipment starts messing up. So it's just interesting to me that for whatever reason, the Nimitz, your case, the Berkshire UFO incident, yours happened really close by water. Berkshire UFO happened near water. Nimitz happened near water. We're looking at almost the same exact shape. There has to be something to this.
If you, when you get to reading the book, you'll notice the United States Coast Guard got called out. Somebody had seen something in the water. Now, this is documented in their reports. It was 6 crew members on a boat that went out, and they took one of these mooring poles and they bumped a UFO underwater until it left. And it was 6 crew members, and this is documented in the book. It tells you where to find it, and documented by the Coast Guard. So this is right when this happened to me. No, sir. Like I say, that's in it's in the first book and the second book. And that happened right here in Pascagoula. Same time mine happened.
Well,
and that's pretty stout right there, the Coast Guard coming as witnesses.
I mean, that's as credible as you can get. That's one of the most
Can't
credible.
get any more credible, I don't think, because they're not going to lie about.
Why would they lie?
It.
I mean, they don't have any reason to lie there. You know what? I think I've kept you long enough, sir. But before
I've enjoyed it.
I have too. And before I let you go, I just want to let everybody know to definitely go ahead and check out the Pascagoula, the closest encounter, my story, and the Pascagoula, the story continues, new evidence and new witnesses. I genuinely want to thank you for coming out, for doing this interview. just have no clue of
Oh,
how it's so important to me.
I've
And
enjoyed it. And you also have my contact information if you.
yes, I want to read your second book, and if you would do me the honor, I would love to have you back in to kind of go over what's going on in that second book and just kind of review everything that we
Well,
talked
let's
about.
do it. That'll work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know how
Well,
to get a hold of me? That'll work. Uh, People can get the books at Amazon if they want to get them in reading. Amazon.com.
Amazon.com, you guys definitely check it out. Again, Calvin, I appreciate you so much, sir, and you have a great rest of your evening too. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Calvin.
Later
Take
on,
care.
bud.